Hey, Ken, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for working that out with me.
Yeah, apologize about that little hiccup,
That's all right. It happens.
but we're here now. So, what got you involved in the Marines? What
Um,
motivated you?
my father was a Marine. He was in Vietnam, and I seen what a good person it made him. And he had good character and good integrity, and that's important to me. And he's the hero of my life, so I thought I will take that route.
And what then made you establish the American Investigative Society of Cold Cases?
Well, once I became a detective, I got a case that I couldn't solve, and I was not used to that. And I did not know where you turned. What do you do when you have a case like that? One thing I knew I wasn't going to do is put it back in the drawer because that's the way it became cold to begin with. So I said, you know what? I want to get all these disciplines together: criminal profilers, detectives, psychologists, uh, academia, all of them looking at different angles at the case. Because sometimes I think when one area looks at it, you kind of get tunnel vision. So that's why I created it.
How long were you in the Marines for?
4 years.
And then you became a detective after the Marines?
After the Marine Corps, I went to college because when I got out, I realized that I couldn't get a job just being a veteran, and I had to put myself through college. So I did that, and then I became a patrol cop and eventually a detective.
So, how long were you a patrol cop, and where was you based?
I was a patrol cop only for about a year and a half out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, before I got assigned to the narcotics unit. And then the FBI picked me up, and I was undercover with the FBI for 2 years before I became a cold case detective for about the past 10.
So, what was your hurriest moment in law enforcement?
Oh, boy. I guess every day not knowing, you know. That's what it is. So I mean, had a lot of strange encounters, a lot of different things, but to me, I always wanted to be a detective. I never wanted to be a cop. But sometimes, in order to get where you have to get or want to get, you got to go through certain routes, and that's the route that I took.
So, did you have any close calls with criminals?
I had close calls all the time working undercover. I mean, you never know. I mean, you're buying drugs off people that have guns and are ready to kick your ass in any minute. So, I mean, every day is.
And when you were in there, then trying to do these deals, was there perhaps a moment when they suspected, or were like wanted to pat you down, or
Oh,
anything
yeah.
like that?
Yeah, I've been patted down, been told to do the cocaine and stuff like that. Um, it's just part of the job. So sometimes you got to be creative in what you do to get out of the situation. And I'm just glad that I'm retired from that.
Do you think it gave you a bit of PTSD?
No, no, I know. To me, it's just a job. It's just an occupation. Someone said to me the other day about, well, I made a comment that I wasn't strictly pro law enforcement, and they wanted to know what that meant. And I told them that it was just an occupation for me. It's all about the truth. I don't care if it's never about the prosecution or the defense. It's about the truth. And if it's never that, it has to change.
Yeah, and we've interviewed a lot of ex-cops in this country, and they join to go after the bad guys, but sometimes they get put in work that they don't quite agree with. I'll just leave it at that. All right, so let's get to the cold case stuff then. So you were retained by the daughter of murder victim Phyllis Carson, who was a victim of homicide in 1970 in French Camp, California, and you were able to find something in the police reports that could solve the case. So, what was the circumstances of the homicide?
Well, you had a young mother of three that was murdered. She went missing in 1970. And a few months later, after leaving the bar with an unknown individual, about 4 weeks later, her body was found and it was declared a homicide. So I was retained by the daughter because the police department closed the case. They actually, and this baffles me, They actually told her that they had no more clues, no more leads, nothing else could be tested, and we're going to close the case. So it was a catch-22 because that's horrible, number one. But number two, they gave her the police reports. And I don't know how it is in the UK, but over here, getting police reports is very difficult. But in order to effectively solve cold cases, you need police reports. And so the family was able to give those reports to me, and I was able, and it's not just me. Anybody with a fresh set of unbiased eyes can see something that somebody else missed. And I seen a clue that was sitting right there in front of everybody, and nobody caught it for 50 years, and we caught it, and she was forever grateful.
So let's go over this a bit more slowly then. What was the method used to kill her?
So they were unable to determine how she was murdered because her body was too badly decomposed. But you can deduce, and I always say you can, the goal of a detective is to deduce possibilities to probabilities. And by that, you can deduce that she wasn't shot because her skeletal remains were not nicked, nothing intact. She wasn't stabbed. She didn't have her ribs nicked or anything like that. And she had a scarf on that had a metal hook, like a ring. So I'm fairly confident saying that she was probably strangled with her own scarf.
Wow. Okay. And what year was that then?
That was 1970.
1970. And where was the body found?
In French Camp, California, alongside a road, an interstate that was under construction. Somebody had looked like basically thrown her from this vehicle.
And what was the preservation of the evidence like if it was that old?
That I don't know. They still had the evidence. Now, how it was kept, whether it was in an airtight container or kept dry, I don't know. And I don't know if they did a lot of DNA work in order to solve the case, to be honest with you.
So was the murderer brought in then?
No, it's still an unsolved case, but how I was able to deduce who the suspect was is that, and he was mentioned in the report, and police had him on the radar, and they went to try to talk to him twice, but both times he wasn't home, and then they gave up.
Oh.
So when I got the case and I looked at it, everybody knew this guy, but they didn't know his name. Everybody at the bar that she was last seen knew who he was, but didn't know his name. But they were all able to give little clues. Like one said, he had an Okie accent. Well, I don't know what that means. Right at the time, I do now. They also said he kept playing the same song over and over again at the bar. And they said the song was Okie from Muskogee. I know that's from Merle Haggard. So I research it and I find out that song is basically a national anthem from people from Oklahoma. So I was able to deduce, find the guy's name, find out where he's from, and guess where he's from? Oklahoma. And when I find a picture of him today, 50 years later on Facebook, he's wearing an Oklahoma football shirt.
Wow.
So we deduced that it was him, and now it's in the police department's hand to follow it up.
What's your hope that will happen? And, what's the likelihood of them doing something?
They're not very happy with me, put it that way. But I'm used to that. A lot of law enforcement have egos. And they don't like somebody coming in and showing them up. And it's not showing them up. It's just seeing something that you missed. And we should all be on the same page. My hope is that they go and interview the guy and he confesses to what he did. And if he didn't do it, at the very minimum, he's a great witness for that night that was never interviewed.
Yeah, wow, it's fascinating. So you had a lot to do with the History Channel's docuseries Hunt for the Zodiac Killer.
Yes, that was a series that I did, 5-episode series at the end of 2017 for the History Channel. We were chasing down the infamous Zodiac Killer from 1969 California.
So what did he do?
He was a unique serial killer because he would murder people and then taunt the police by sending them letters and codes saying, if you break these codes, you will find out my identity. Well, we were able to break a code 50 years later, but it did not tell who he was. It was just more taunts.
And what method was he using to kill people?
He would sneak up on lovers in lover lanes, when they were back in the late 60s parking, and he would shoot them. And most of his aggression was towards the females. And then he would write stuff on their cars. He would go and telephone the police, hey, I just killed 2 people. Very, very intelligent. Had a lot of training in coding, and was probably ex-military.
So, do we know that anything happened in his childhood that triggered him?
Well, that's the thing, is there's so many suspects, and each one of them you could look at and say it's him. But then all of a sudden you start reading on the next guy, and you're like, no, it's him. And so you can't do backgrounds when you don't know exactly who the suspect is. And he's eluded authorities for 50 years, and I don't know if he'll ever be caught.
Good grief. So with the Chris Watts case then, absolutely devastating to people who watch that, just the heinous nature of the crimes. And our hearts go out to all the survivors of all of these monsters. But it was particularly gory, because of the babies involved. And you see the videos of the little kids playing and thinking what he did. And oh my goodness, what an absolute POS. Yeah. So what got you involved in this one?
Well, on my YouTube channel, which I just started about a year ago, that was requested, and I didn't even know anything about the case, to be honest with you. I don't follow true crime like I used to when I was a teenager. I loved it, but then I just didn't follow it anymore, and people were requesting that I talk about it. So I looked it up, I did some research on it, and I agree with your assessment of what his characterization is, and how he could do that. And anybody that can do that to a family member, listen, anybody has the propensity to kill. I don't care who you are. You may say that you would never, but you just weren't put in the right circumstance or the right situation. Chris Watts, that's a whole new level. That's evil. Okay, that's not being put in a situation. When you kill not only your wife and pregnant wife and 2 small children, that's an evil, and that's exactly what he is.
What do you think was going through his head when he did these murders?
Well, I'm not a psychologist, and I like to stay in my lane, but as a layman or as a detective, I would think that he thought he could get a better life somewhere else, and that he felt trapped, and he made a decision, and ultimately it was the worst decision you could ever make. And he's where he should be, hopefully, for the rest of his life.
So do you think he was a good liar in the beginning? Because we saw the video of him where the cop comes and they're looking around with the neighbor.
Yes, I do. But I get a lot of people say, well, you don't know what you're talking about, because I could see plain as day that he's lying. No, you can't. Nobody can. Okay? There's no behavioral experts don't exist. Okay? Polygraphs don't exist because they're not 100%. They might be 80%. They might be 75%. But if it ain't 100, it ain't legit. So I don't buy into that. I thought that he was a good liar. I'm looking at it. I know he's lying. I'm trying to pick up things. Yes, I see that he's antsy. He's nervous. But I can't base that off anything. His wife is missing. But his neighbor knew. And that's who police should be listening to. That neighbor knew like that. He's like, something's wrong. Something's wrong with him. He's acting jumpy. And I caught on to that, and I'm like, oh, that's good.
So motivators for homicide include sex, greed, revenge. What motivated Chris?
I think it was greed. The greed of wanting a new family, wanting that self-satisfaction. And I think that's what led to it. And, but sex ties into it, because he was having an affair. Sex ties into a lot of things because it's such a powerful motivator in life. And it's just like eating, it's just like drinking and breathing air. You need it. And it's incredible how the body uses that to procreate, that urge. And it's always a high motivator. So Chris had a lot of that in, as well as greed.
Do you think the woman he was having the affair with was completely innocent?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that because I haven't looked into her. I seen one little brief interview with her, and I just don't know. I know a lot of people think that she does, but until I see any evidence otherwise, I would say no, she had no idea.
So the investigators used the strategy of planting the seed of his wife killing the kids in order to get him to confess and minimize his involvement. Do you think that was a shrewd strategy?
Yeah, I thought that was very good. And as I was watching it, I'm putting myself in the detective shoes and the questions that she's asking. And before she said that, I was like, I would plant that seed. You always do that. Plant it. Hey, if it was just an accident, tell us. And because they will minimize their involvement a lot of times. She did the same thing in this interview. And she said, well, did the victim Shannon did she kill the kids, and then you have to do something? And he bid on it. And to me, I only seen snippets, but it looked like a very easy confession.
So have you had to interrogate people throughout your careers?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And do you have to get trained to do that?
I mean, yes, there's training, but just in like any vocation, if you're a natural and you have the passion and you want to do something, you can do it. You don't need training, but sure, you go through it.
And the people that you interrogated then, what were the most serious crimes they had committed?
Well, homicide for sure. Burglaries, robberies, a ton of drug cases, deliveries and so forth.
And how forthcoming were the murderers with information that you interrogated?
Drug cases, easy. Because especially when I was undercover with the FBI and I had that federal authority, it's much different than a state's authority. And they would flip. But in any drug case, you could only go so far. And then people stop talking.
What about the murder cases?
I would say obviously not so much. And I never thought that I was a great interrogator or a great interviewer. I felt that it was one of my weak points. So no, they're not very forthcoming, but you can catch them, in a lot of inconsistencies. And I was able to do that. And that's all a detective wants, is to have another lead.
We've just got a couple of minutes left, Ken, so we've got a few questions coming from the viewers. Is it true that the Zodiac killer used astrology symbols in his codes?
Yes and no. I mean, they could certainly be deemed astrology related, but there also could be deemed bows, balls, different symbols that he used can be interpreted different ways.
Next question is from Kelsey. She wants to know, how important is gut instinct in your investigations?
Very little, I believe. I used to always believe in it, and I used to always put myself in the criminal's mind, saying, I'd be standing at the crime scene saying, what would he do? Which way would he go? But then I realized they think differently than I do. So I can't do that anymore. I go strictly off evidence and let it lead me where it leads me.
All right. Huge thank you for coming on, Ken, and spending some time with us. Do you want to tell the viewers where they can find you online?
Yeah, my website's kenmains.com, or check out my YouTube channel, Unsolved No More. If you like true crime and you want no bullshit and somebody that tells it like it is, come and check me out.
I'm sure a few will, because we love true crime on this channel. So you have a good rest of your day, mate. Cheers.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ken. Bye bye.
Bye.
Cheers.